Thank you so much for joining us for First Thursday with the Sustainability Alliance. We will be hearing about the sustainability mobility moving to clean and equitable transportation future with NCOG, Tulsa Clean City, Area Clean Cities. We're excited to have another wonderful speaker, Michelle Merchant, joining us today and hold an important conversation about transit, transportation, and green mobility. And many of you have joined us in the past under a different name, Sustainable Tulsa. And for the first 20 years of our organization, we operated under the name Sustainable Tulsa, and the need for greater sustainability practices coupled with a vision of greater impact required that we change our name to reflect our determination and the fact that we've grown. Our scorecard program is now operating in 7 states and 16 cities, and the Sustainability Alliance stands for that collaboration between our organizations, leading businesses and communities we live in. So working together, we can make a world of difference. So thank you again for joining us for First Thursday with the Sustainability Alliance. And we thank you for wanting to support the Alliance as well as sustainable communities. So thank you. We are again going to have a great conversation around transportation. But before we do that, I'd like to have Morgan launch our first poll, if you don't mind. And please take a moment to answer those questions in the pop-up on your Zoom window while we begin. I'll just take a little pause so you have a chance to do that. It's really important. It helps us really find out how we can better serve you. So take just a few minutes to answer those questions. There's only a couple, and it gives us an idea. So you should have seen that intro poll pop up for you. And I'll just take a quick pause to let you have a chance to do that. Great. It looks like many of you are taking that poll, and we can't thank you enough. It really helps us determine how we can definitely improve providing the education that you are looking for. We want to say a big thank you to our program sponsors who make First Thursdays like this possible. Our lead sponsor, Williams, and our neighborhood partners, Public Service Company of Oklahoma and PSO Wind Choice, and our community advocates, American Waste Control, Cavanta, the Met, One Oak, Save Our Streams, Spirit Air System, Tulsa Farmers Market, Bank at the West, and Camp Trevera. I think we're starting to add a few more, so look for that in our next program, some new sponsors that are joining us. So thank you to our wonderful Sustainable Alliance board members, and here they are with us today. We have Mike Teague, Richard Kotarski, and Nadia Kirilova. We appreciate their joining us and being a part of today's program. And finally, I'd like to thank the incredible team of the Sustainability Alliance who worked to bring this program to you: Teresa Kerrigan, Jill Maud, Jason Breimer, and Morgan Fairley. So give them and our board a round of applause for all their support, and also our sponsors. We really could not do it without them and without you being a part of the program today. So if you want to support the work that we're doing, become an individual supporter of the Sustainability Alliance. It's easier than ever. It's just $25. Your name will be added to a growing list of change makers in our community. Click on the link in the chat and donate today. It's your donation that helps us continue to move sustainability education forward in Oklahoma and across our communities. Please join us for our next First Thursday on November 3rd. This upcoming First Thursday, we'll dive into the issues of food waste and food insecurity by Katie Plahocki, Executive Director of R&G Foods, who is making exciting strides in this space for our community. If many of you probably know Katie, and if you haven't, she's just a force really around this conversation around foods insecurity and security. So please join us for that. And how you can tackle food waste and support efforts to improve access to healthy foods as we approach our most food-focused holiday of the year, Thanksgiving. So register for this event at thesustainabilityalliance.org. I think that link will be thrown in the chat there for you. And the Sustainability Alliance also has access to other ways that you can get involved. Jump on our Facebook group and track the things that we're doing and some of our partners, the work that they're doing. Now I'm going to turn it over to Morgan and introduce some of our sponsors and digital booths. Morgan?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Corey. I'd like to share a few words from our sponsors.
Since Williams was founded in 1908, much has changed. The growth of cities, rise of technologies, our transformation from a family-owned business to America's clean energy partner, supplying natural gas for cooking, heating, and powering 76 million homes. And while so much has changed, some things should remain the same, like keeping promises, exceeding safety standards, doing the right thing, and protecting the environment. Williams, we make clean energy happen.
Thank you, Williams. Fantastic sponsor. We also have PSO. Carrie Rowland would like to share a little bit about the PSO rebates. I don't know if she's here with us today, but this is a great program for businesses to be able to qualify for awesome savings. So check it out online or email Carrie directly at krrowland@aep.com. Then we have the Met, who offers recycling services throughout the year through their drop-off sites and special recycling events. The Met proudly provides meaningful employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. Find out more about how you can use their services and what they offer by visiting metrecycle.com. Another one of our great sponsors is Save Streams for the City of Tulsa and Water Quality Program. The Save Our Streams program promotes healthy waterways and pollution prevention through their storm water quality program. From environmental inspections and household pollutants collection, they offer various services to help you help our streams. Get in touch with them via email at stormwaterquality@cityoftulsa.org. And Bank of the West, are you curious about the carbon footprint of your purchases? Bank of the West exclusively offers this service through their mobile app and donates 1% of net revenue from your bank account to 1% for the planet at no cost to you. If you have questions or are interested in signing up, call Eric Andrews at 918-877-4577. And finally, we have the Tulsa Farmers Market. This takes place every Saturday from May to November in the Kendall Whittier District. Join them this Saturday from 7 to noon to get local produce and other delicious local fares. And they are also now offering a second Sunday event for makers of arts and eats and fun. Be there this Sunday, October 9th, to see what it's all about and stop by and say hi to us. I will be there with a booth. Would love to see you at the market. All right, Corey, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Appreciate, again, all of our sponsors and helping us support this platform of education. So thank you. Next, I'd like to just share with you that we're just so excited to have our very first speaker of the Sustainability Alliance, and we're delighted that Michelle Merchant accepted that invitation. She is the Sustainability Program Planner at INCOG, Tulsa's regional planning organization, where she leads the Tulsa Area Clean Cities Coalition and supports other sustainability-focused initiatives. Michelle began working with INCOG after graduating from the University of Tulsa as the 2021 Outstanding Senior in Environmental Policy with a double major in economics. Michelle's also studied sustainable development at the School for Field Studies in Costa Rica, where she developed a special interest in environmental and energy justice issues. Michelle has interned with Oklahoma Sustainability Network and the Oklahoma Policy Institute. Tulsa Area Clean Cities focus on decarbonization and energy resilience within the transportation sector, the source of roughly a third of US greenhouse gas emissions today. So thank you for being here today, Michelle. We're excited to hear your presentation.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Let's see if I can take over the screen here. All right, am I sharing?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Wonderful. All righty. Well, thank you to everybody for joining today, taking the time to listen to this topic. It's really exciting and is honestly taking off right now, thanks to a lot of recent legislation channeling funding towards sustainable mobility. Without further ado, I guess I'll just go ahead and skip to the next slide here. So our agenda, first I'm going to talk about kind of an overview, give you guys sort of a lay of the land on sustainable mobility. And then I'm going to touch on a few initiatives that are happening here locally. Next, I'm going to discuss government efforts to address these issues in sustainable mobility. And then following that, I'll dig into a few local initiatives that might be of interest to you. And then finally, I'm going to end with a discussion of a few fuels that I think are particularly interesting, especially for our state as we move towards a lower carbon transportation future. So first, just to briefly touch on INCOG and provide a little bit more background on our organization. We are a voluntary association of local and tribal governments that works throughout the region of Tulsa. We were established in 1967, and as Corey said, we are the regional transportation or regional planning organization. We're also the regional transportation planning organization. So we house transportation planning, the City of Tulsa's planning office. We have community and economic development departments. We offer 911 coordination as well as rural fire coordination services, senior services, and then my department is the Office of Energy and Environmental Sustainability. That's where I work within, and that houses the Tulsa Air Quality Program that I also support. We run energy efficiency programs. Obviously, Tulsa Area Clean Cities, the program that I lead, is within that department. We have the Oklahoma CPACE program run by Nancy Graham. And then the director of that department is Clint Johnson, who I believe might be on our call today. Moving on from there, a little bit about Clean Cities, just to give you guys some background. Tulsa Area Clean Cities is just one coalition within the nationwide Clean Cities Network, which is made up of more than 75 active coalitions covering nearly every state. And we help local decision makers and fleets understand and implement alternative and renewable fuels, idle reduction measures, fuel economy improvements, new mobility choices, and emerging transportation technologies. Clean Cities coalitions foster the economic, environmental, and energy security of the United States by working locally to advance affordable domestic transportation fuels, energy efficient mobility systems, and other fuel-saving technologies and practices. And our coalitions within the network accomplish this mission by building partnerships with public and private sector transportation stakeholders. And that's why we call ourselves coalitions, because it's really the network that we have, both between coalitions with federal partnerships through the Department of Energy, as well as national laboratories, and then of course our local partnerships. And then one final note on that is that we are fuel and technology neutral. And we primarily support fleets in all sectors, so public, private, nonprofit, philanthropic, all of those areas. And just to touch on a bit of our portfolio, which I think I kind of generally covered, we work to assist our stakeholders with whatever petroleum displacing project they're interested in undertaking. So that includes all types of alternative fuels, just anything non-diesel and gas. We will also work with idle reduction and fuel economy improvement projects or new and advanced mobility technologies. And we also help advance the infrastructure to support local adoption of these technologies. And we organize trainings, several of which happened this past summer, to ensure our first responders are educated on how to respond to emergencies involving these new technologies that we're trying to deploy. So why is sustainability important in transportation? I saw that it looked like from the poll about 70% of this group has familiarity with this topic. So I hope to just breeze by this one. But for those 3 out of 10 of you that may be unfamiliar with this topic in general. According to the EPA in 2020, transportation emissions accounted for about 27% of our total greenhouse gas emissions within the US. But it doesn't just stop at transportation, or excuse me, greenhouse gas emissions. It's also other air toxics that contribute to public health issues. So this isn't just an environmental problem, it's a public health problem to have increased emissions. So in order to tackle that issue, energy efficiency is hugely important. Personal vehicle dominance in the USA as our primary way of getting around contributes to congestion in major cities. It's not something, you know, every once in a while I hit traffic here in Tulsa, so maybe congestion isn't so much of a local issue, but, you know, certainly there are more optimal ways that we could be improving the efficiencies of moving both people and goods. And some information on electric vehicles to get us started with the conversation around energy efficiency. And I think that this is a big benefit of EVs that actually doesn't get enough attention from at least the conversations that I hear. So an important fact that I hope you all take away from today's presentation is that 87 to 91% of the original energy, and by original energy, that means talking about the energy within the battery in the vehicle, 87 to 91% of that battery energy ends up as power in the wheels in an electric vehicle. And if you compare that to a gas-powered car or internal combustion engine vehicles, they typically lose about 80% of the efficiency. So they're only basically only 20% or so of the energy stored in the gasoline in your gas tank is actually turning into motion at the wheels. So there's a comparison for you. It's, you know, 20% versus 80 to 90%. And an interesting note on this is that even if an EV is running on what we would consider a dirty grid, even with coal, replacing gasoline-powered cars with EVs saves energy regardless of the energy source used to recharge those EVs. So even if you're sourcing your electricity from coal, natural gas, or otherwise, it still ends up in energy efficiency savings compared to us all operating our internal combustion engines around the city. So this is just kind of a funny thing I came across on LinkedIn, but electric vehicles get a lot of attention and they're very cool, and I'm totally pro EV, but I think that especially when we talk about energy efficiency in this sector, walking, cycling, public transport, rail, parking, all of those are also important. And don't, I think, at least right now, they're not quite getting the emphasis as I would hope to see on them. So to start talking about energy efficiency more broadly, basically the movement of personal vehicles, you know, being the dominant way of moving people in the USA today, you know, creating these congestion issues. If we look at, you know, solutions to this problem, even if we all had EVs, we would still have the same congestion issues that are, you know, still an issue. So, you know, the solution in a lot of places is to build more lanes. You know, you have more cars, you build more lanes, problem solved. Well, if you look at this, you know, graphic on the left, you can kind of see why that's not necessarily a solution. And actually, it's displacing some of those personal vehicle trips with mass transit trips that offers the best avenue towards improving our efficiencies, both in saving time as a commuter and then also in emissions and overall energy efficiency. So you can see here that one train can carry the equivalent of 15 buses worth of people. That can carry the equivalent of 625 cars worth of people. So that's just something to put that into context. And then over here on the right, you can see sort of what that looks like broken down into a rate of how fast you're moving people. So not only could we be more efficient with our energy usage in the transportation sector, but we can also start moving towards you know, saving time. You know, if you're on a train going somewhere, you're saving a whole lot of time in traffic, or in a bus. You know, more realistic for the US, we have more buses ingrained in our transit system at this point. You know, you can get work done on the bus on your way to work or wherever it is that you're trying to get to. So definitely encouraging access to and expansion of public transit, I think, is the best thing that we could do to improve energy efficiency within transportation. Obviously, our infrastructure is built for people to move via personal vehicles, so it'll take an increased awareness of and openness to the benefits of transit to make a cultural shift there. And it's not to say that personal vehicles don't have a place. I don't want to come off as saying that, just that we need to offset some of the trips that we can by providing convenient and reliable public transportation to make that happen. So if you're looking for a call to action in my presentation today, this is it. My suggestion is to replace the trips that you can with walking, biking, transit, or shared modes of travel. So if you're carpooling, hopping in an Uber pool, all of those options, or bike share, for example. And especially to focus on that on ozone alert days. So I mentioned that I support the Tulsa Air Quality Program. You can go to tulsaairquality.com to sign up for ozone alerts. So yesterday was an ozone alert day. So I tried to ride my bike around, but basically that's a great call to action that you can take, so that on days when our urban air quality might be negatively impacted by ozone, ground level ozone, you can help reduce the formation of that ground level ozone by opting out of taking your personal vehicle somewhere. All right, getting into transportation emissions. So the transportation sector generates the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions in the US, as we mentioned. And then within that, if you look at this graph here, the EPA estimated in 2020 that light duty vehicles, so those are all our personal vehicles, they account for roughly 57% of the emissions within the transportation sector. So that's something, you know, to consider there, back to the reason for mass transit. Over 90% of the fuel used for transportation is petroleum based, meaning gas and diesel. And that's why Clean Cities focuses on alternatives to gas and diesel to help not only to reduce emissions within the transportation fuels that we're using, but also to increase energy security. You might have heard me say that when I was introducing Clean Cities. So the USA is a net importer of petroleum as a transportation fuel. So if we can diversify our fuel sources that we're using in our transportation sector, we will have less concern from an energy security perspective than being so reliant, 90% reliant on gas and diesel. We're all seeing how Europe is being affected with energy security issues in natural gas due to the war in Ukraine. So we can all imagine how important that is. But thinking about emissions outside of the scope of just greenhouse gases, you have particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, and the secondary pollutants that they create, one of which is ground level ozone. And these are all linked to adverse health outcomes, including respiratory conditions, cardiovascular issues, and cancer. So, and then I'd like to touch on environmental justice and sustainable mobility. So around 60 million people live within 500 meters of roads with high traffic volumes, which when I say high traffic volumes, the numbers that I was looking at were using for volumes greater than 25,000 in annual average daily traffic. Vulnerable populations, disadvantaged communities are disproportionately impacted by the pollution created in the transportation sector. So that's why this is a really important thing to be noting when we're talking about environmental justice within sustainable mobility. In urban areas across the US, low-income neighborhoods and communities of color experience an average of 28% more nitrogen dioxide pollution than higher income and white neighborhoods, according to the American Geophysical Union. And when you look at that 28% more nitrogen dioxide pollution, you know, they were looking just at that one pollutant, but it's the heavy duty freight, especially, that's producing that nitrogen dioxide. So you can really, you can kind of extrapolate that to cover, you know, all of the other pollutants that are going to be emitted by those heavy duty freight vehicles. Those are also included. You know, you can basically think about how those are also 28% more. These communities are affected 28% more by those pollutants as well. So some reasons for this being an issue: obviously lower property values near to major highways and interstates would contribute to people finding affordable housing in those areas. So some people might be forced to move to an area that has higher pollution from the nearby highway, just because that's where they can afford to live. But then on the flip side of that, there has also been discrimination in the placement of highway projects throughout history. That's a really important topic too, you know, really matches up with the history of redlining in the US. And it's definitely an issue, you know, of just discrimination and targeting those communities to basically offload our negative impacts of our transportation systems. And then another equity concern within sustainable mobility that's really important, and I'll touch on kind of as I continue through this presentation. Lower income households are less likely to have access to a personal vehicle, forcing many to depend upon the limited alternative mobility options that we have available. And without a personal vehicle, within the systems that I was talking about in the US, how we are, you know, very much a car-centric, we're a car-centric nation. This really limits access by these people to opportunity, including education, healthcare, jobs, and fresh food. And it just decreases overall quality of life and not being able to get where they need to go when they need to. So it's a problem for social mobility and economic mobility, certainly, and it's definitely within the realm of equity concerns that we can be thinking about when we talk about mobility. So some government efforts to improve transportation sustainability. I really just want to give you guys a sense of how our government is working to address these issues. And this is not an exhaustive list by any means, just a peek at the major initiatives focused on sustainability in transportation. So the Department of Energy, Environmental Protection Agency, and the US Department of Transportation all have really focused efforts to tackle transportation sustainability. So within the DOE, their Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy is focused on research and development of next-gen technologies and fuels. Within that office, they have the Vehicle Technologies Office, which is where Clean Cities actually was born from. And so Clean Cities is basically the boots on the ground program that the DOE developed to be catalyzing these types of projects to really implement these technologies and fuels that they're studying and getting them deployed in communities. The DOE has 17 national laboratories, including just a few that I'm aware of that work in this space: the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, National Energy Technology Laboratory, Argonne National Lab, and others. And then some programs and funding are listed here. You know, like I said, this isn't exhaustive, but there are lots of different programs that are really catalyzing these projects, like I was saying, in communities. At the EPA, they're focused on air quality regulation. So that's kind of the angle they take to transportation sustainability. And they're especially focused on emissions controls. And so they have a SmartWay program, which I want to highlight because that's basically for, especially for national freight fleets of vehicles, companies can join the SmartWay program and help make their fleets more sustainable. And they can get recognition for being a part of the program. It's a really good program, kind of very much in the same vein as Clean Cities. At the U.S. Department of Transportation, they're focused on transportation planning, public transit, and deployment. And they offer a ton of funding programs that are hugely beneficial to us. The National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program has been at the forefront this past year, as it's Oklahoma just got our state plan approved actually several weeks ago for that NEVI program. So we're going to be deploying and really enhancing our network of fast charging for electric vehicles along our state interstates and highways. The DOT also houses the Federal Transit Administration programs, including the Low and No Emissions Program and Buses and Bus Facilities. And those programs are really helping transit agencies to get vehicles that they need, and especially alternative fuel vehicles. A number of other programs are also within there. And then just kind of a last note, when I said that it's a really exciting time in sustainable mobility, I would say within the last year, this major legislation between the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act has been hugely beneficial. And a number of the programs that I named here were actually out of these pieces of legislation that are really going to push forward progress in sustainable mobility. All right. So first I want to talk about the Tulsa Mobility Innovation Strategy as one of our local initiatives. So this plan is a major benefit to our region in submitting proposals for the funding opportunities that I just covered. And it seeks to expand our regional advanced mobility economy, catalyze innovation, and solve local transportation challenges. This plan takes the lenses of equity, economy, policy, and partnerships in identifying opportunities to improve commutes, improve mobility equity and access, as we were discussing, attracting new business, reducing vehicle emissions, and making roadways safer. So it's hoping to achieve all of these different goals in synergy by using many of the funding sources that I just covered. And then also pulling together the partnerships between public, private, and philanthropic sectors to really make those projects happen. And also to craft very competitive applications for those funding sources. So this strategy was released earlier this year in March to the public, and it's available on the City of Tulsa's website if anyone would like to access that. I'm happy to pop some links that I've mentioned here today in the chat after I'm done speaking. A few of these specific projects that this plan hopes to get started on first within the first few years of basically being initiated. So starting from now over the next 3 years or so, we're hoping to start on projects within each of these areas specifically. So making our region an attractive area for pilot projects of autonomous vehicles and shared mobility especially. As I mentioned with P4 partnerships, we're already seeing some really wonderful P4 partnerships happening in Tulsa. Many of you may be aware of the recent Build Back Better award that was given to the region for an advanced mobility cluster of industry. So that's very exciting and is really the result of these wonderful P4 partnerships. Another project is to pilot a mobility hub centered on food security. And I would love to talk about that more in the Q&A if anyone's interested in diving into that. To develop a microtransit network, which I'm going to discuss here in just a moment in further detail. And then to create an innovation challenge. So the University of Tulsa has actually decided to take on that, and they are going to, they're currently working on creating an interdisciplinary innovation challenge that would be targeting creating solutions to transportation challenges, specifically in disadvantaged communities in our area. Moving on to another local initiative that I'm really excited to be sharing with all of you, but Tulsa Transit. Shout out to them for just being such an innovative and sustainability focused agency. They, I recently learned, are one of the only transit agencies in the country to be operating on basically 100% alternative fuels. which is comprised of natural gas and electric vehicles in their fleet, but mostly natural gas. And when I say almost 100%, I believe they do still have some diesel vehicles in their fleet, but to my knowledge, they're not running very often. So most days, Tulsa Transit is running on 100% alternative fuels. And some recent achievements by Tulsa Transit. Firstly, I'll say that they were awarded $11 million recently. I believe that the award was announced in late August, and they're going to be receiving those funds to replace some of their older, less efficient vehicles with 9 compressed natural gas buses and 7 new electric buses. So that'll bring their fleet up to 11 electric buses, and the remaining vehicles in their fleet are all natural gas after that. Some recent achievements by Tulsa Transit is their North-South Peoria BRT bus rapid transit line, which is their most used line and has been a huge success. They launched an app that shows not only their own routes, but as additional mobility options. So this is moving towards what we call a mobility as a service model, where you can sort of see all of your travel options in one place on an app. They also, at this point, they're showing this machine bikes on their app in addition to their bus lines. And also shout out to this machine for being our local nonprofit electric bike share. It's so great that not only for people who visit our area to be able to ride around the city with 0 emissions, and it's a ton of fun, but it also provides a really important way of moving around the city for people who may not have a personal vehicle. So it's really a great thing we have here. And it is a local nonprofit. So yeah, I highly recommend looking into them and using their service. Some other things that are to come for Tulsa Transit, they plan to launch a new east-west bus rapid transit line along 11th and 21st Streets. I believe it's in 2024 that they're hoping to launch that. And that really follows from the success of the North-South BRT line. Another thing that might be on the horizon for Tulsa Transit is a microtransit pilot. So when I say microtransit, that is basically, instead of the large transit bus that's fixed route that we're all used to, kind of the primary way we think about transit is that big bus on a fixed route. Microtransit basically flips that and looks at, okay, if there's an area where a bus line is not getting very high ridership, what can we do to improve service in those areas and move those larger buses to some other route where they're going to be used more efficiently. So microtransit is using a smaller vehicle than those big buses. So maybe it's a half like cutaway bus. Maybe it's a small, small occupancy vehicle like a sedan, or maybe it's like a van. There are some different options, but basically right sizing that vehicle to meet the ridership needs of an area. And then typically they offer curb to curb on-demand service. So you could, set an appointment, schedule a time for that vehicle to show up, and they would arrive at the address you specify and then take you to an end location that you specify, whether that's the grocery store, or maybe it's to another connection spot, a stop along a route of, say, the North-South Peoria BRT line, where you can access other transit connections. A couple of other projects that might be on the horizon, mainly from the interest from the Tulsa Mobility Innovation Strategy, but would definitely involve some collaboration with Tulsa Transit, if not them leading it. A mobility hub at transit hubs and grocery stores. So that would basically be clustering many different mobility options, including rideshare, public transit, the micromobility like this machine and Lime scooters, all sorts of different options in one place so that people can really get to the areas that they need to go. And then an autonomous vehicle pilot, which is, it's very exciting. I don't know that anything's really on the horizon right now, but you know, who knows? There's a lot of great planning that was put in place for that mobility innovation strategy. So if the right group that can make that happen gets together and decides to go after some funding, who knows, maybe we'll see an autonomous vehicle pilot. Now I'm going to touch briefly on a few fuels that I wanted to just share with you all that I think are of real interest here in Oklahoma. And I realize I'm coming up on time, so I'm going to try to cruise through these. So we're seeing a lot of light duty battery electric vehicles every day. So you guys are familiar with Teslas, maybe the Nissan Leaf, Chevy Bolt, all of those. But battery electric is an option for medium and heavy duty applications as well. I was recently at the Green Transportation Summit and Expo, and although it's not focused on electric vehicles, it's focused on the broad spectrum of alternative fuels. Between 80 and 90% of the vehicles in the Expo hall were electric. So that shows you where the focus is right now. Really, the applications of electric vehicles are, they're mostly dependent on the predictability of the duty cycle of the vehicle. So, you know, I think that there is a question, you know, maybe battery electric isn't going to necessarily be the future of long haul freight due to charging times. Maybe that'll change. Maybe charging will get a lot faster in the near future. Who knows? It's kind of hazy what's going to end up taking over, but certainly battery electric is already available in all of these options and is growing very rapidly. I do want to highlight in the lower right corner here, you see an electric school bus that is manufactured here in Tulsa by IC Bus. So that's just a really exciting example of our local economy in the advanced mobility space. And then lastly, another benefit of battery electric vehicles is that they can serve as big batteries, their big batteries can serve as mobile generators. And that can improve grid resilience. So we could potentially use that vehicle to grid technology option to power a building in the case of an outage, or to supply power wherever needed in the case of a disaster. And then renewable natural gas. A lot of fleets in Oklahoma, because of the low cost of fossil natural gas, are already running on compressed natural gas. And the great thing about renewable natural gas is that it's sourced from waste, from organic waste. So basically, this is methane that would otherwise be emitted straight into the atmosphere, worst case scenario, or flared off, which is also releasing carbon into the atmosphere. So basically capturing that methane that's already being produced and then channeling it into use in vehicles, which can actually result in net negative emissions, greenhouse gas emissions over the life cycle of that fuel. So if you look to the right image here, you can see those bottom sort of light olive green lines there. They're showing you the life cycle emissions of RNG from landfill gas, which is slightly positive, but then from wastewater, dairy manure, and food waste, as well as the average between all source types for renewable natural gas, they actually result in net negative greenhouse gas emissions. And that's because not only are you capturing methane that would perhaps otherwise be emitted to the atmosphere, you are displacing fossil natural gas from being fracked and used in those vehicles. So you're capturing something that would go into the atmosphere at the same time as you're displacing something from being pulled up out of the ground. So it can be a great bridge fuel because so many fleets are already running on CNG. This is a drop-in fuel. It's chemically identical to the fossil natural gas that we are used to. So there's no changes needed to a fleet's vehicles or fueling systems. It's all business as usual, but you can start using RNG and get those emission savings. Local production is growing as well in renewable natural gas. So, you know, that's great because we don't want to be hauling gas from one side of the country over here. And actually, it's a little bit different when we talk about RNG because typically we're not directly sending the RNG. It's more through the it's more through a fuel credit system. If you guys are familiar with PSO's Wind Choice program, where you're basically purchasing a portion of that renewable energy generation, you're not directly getting that wind energy to your house, but you are, securing a portion of the generation from that wind energy. So it's definitely more of an economic credit type system to incentivize the production of that fuel. But yeah, so it's just cool that it's produced locally, and I think that that's a great added benefit to this fuel. And a last fuel for thought here, hydrogen, because it's been getting some interesting attention here in Oklahoma. It's a great alternative storage method to batteries. So that's the way I kind of like to think about it. Although it can be used in vehicles or in industrial applications, or to generate electricity. So excess energy on the grid can be used to produce hydrogen. I will say, I said green hydrogen there. It's only going to be green hydrogen if it was produced using renewable electricity on that grid. So you can look down here in the lower right to kind of see the differences between what we call gray, blue, and green hydrogen, which are the primary colors that I'm hearing about most often, although there's like a whole spectrum of colors that basically correlate with different production types of hydrogen. And so back to the storage, storing electricity in hydrogen can help us address renewable energy intermittency. So it can really help make the case and really support us in our movement towards a zero emission grid. It's a quick refuel, zero emission option that I think has a lot of potential for that long distance trucking that I was talking about, because you don't need to stop to charge for any amount of time. You can just, it's a 5-minute fill up, kind of like we experience now at any given, any regular truck stop. And then a few things happening in Oklahoma with this topic of hydrogen. Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana have submitted a joint proposal to the Department of Energy to create a regional hydrogen hub. So basically it would be a regional production hub within those 3 states. And I believe the DOE is going to be selecting 10 hydrogen hubs throughout the country. So, I think given our location and history being an energy state, along with those other states, I think that's a very exciting prospect for us. And then Oklahoma's interest in hydrogen makes a lot of sense because basically we can take advantage of our existing wind assets to create green hydrogen. We can take advantage of our natural gas supply to create gray hydrogen. And then if we take advantage of our empty natural gas wells, especially, we could be a big hub for blue hydrogen, where you have methane produced hydrogen plus carbon capture, sending the carbon down into those empty wells. And then additionally, existing pipeline infrastructure has potential to be used for transporting hydrogen, although there are differing views on whether or not that is going to really happen. So, and then one last thought that I'd like to leave with you all on hydrogen, green versus blue or gray. So blue and gray using natural gas, green using renewable electricity. We can either build production facilities that are methane steam reformers, or we could choose to build electrolyzers for that green hydrogen. Those are like different technologies. And certainly I don't think it's going to be one or the other that will take hold. But I think maybe a good way to think about, which ones should we be emphasizing and encouraging the development of here in Oklahoma, we should be thinking about which of those types of hydrogen are really going to be in demand in 10 years. So all of you on the call are personally interested in improving sustainability. And obviously all of the participants in the Sustainability Alliance's scorecard program are focused on improving their company's ESG metrics. So, if they were choosing between gray hydrogen and green hydrogen, they might be more leaning towards green hydrogen. So that's just, that might continue to be a trend, I would imagine. And so I think maybe green hydrogen is the future, but certainly I think it'll be a mix. So just kind of food for thought there. And lastly, this is my last slide. I just wanted to leave you all just circling back to the mission of Clean Cities to advance affordable, efficient, and clean transportation fuels and technologies. We do have a primary emphasis on fleets, but we're happy to connect with and help individuals. We would love to get in contact with you and support your fleet. And I wanted to provide both my contact information here on the left, if you're in the Tulsa area or Eastern Oklahoma. We do serve all of Eastern Oklahoma, not just the metro. And then Central Oklahoma Clean Cities is our sister organization in the Oklahoma City area. And you can contact the coordinator there, Eric Pollard, and he covers the OKC area and all of Western Oklahoma. So the whole state is covered, and we are very happy to help you and get in touch. And thank you all for your time and attention and interest in this topic.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Such great information and such a wide range of things to think about when it comes to our communities and transportation and the environment. Really honing into that people profit plan, that triple bottom line. So thank you for touching on all components of that. And I know we have some questions. And so I'm gonna just pass the mic back over to Morgan for our Q&A portion. Morgan?
Thank you, Corey, and thank you so much, Michelle. That was a great presentation, and we've got some awesome questions here to get through. So I'll just go ahead and start with the first one that we had. You mentioned ozone alert days. Could you talk a little bit more about what these are, expectations of compliance, and how expensive it might be for a town to fall out of compliance?
Sure. So ozone alert days are basically, I'm going to pop a link to tulsaairquality.com in the chat here, where you can read all about it and sign up for ozone alerts. But it is our way through the Tulsa Air Quality Program to get in touch with people in Tulsa who are driving their cars on a regular basis, so that when we're getting notice from the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality that the conditions might be right for the formation of ground level ozone the following day, we will send out notice to everyone who's signed up to receive those updates. And that way you can know the day ahead of when an ozone alert day is, that you can take actions that make sense for you, whether it's walking, biking, working from home if you're able to do that, taking carpool if you have a carpool plan with your coworkers, or taking public transit to work or wherever it is that you're needing to go that day. There are options that you can take to help reduce the possibility of formation of ground level ozone on those days, because that's basically when we send out those alerts, we're saying, ooh, like red alert, there's a high chance that we're going to have ozone problems the next day. And it's a huge help. It was actually, Tulsa has the first ozone alert program in the country. It's a really fun thing because others have copied us, and it's a great program that has worked very well. And it does help us to avoid non-attainment of the national ambient air quality standards that are set by EPA. So that's something that we're tracking. We're looking at what are our exceedance days, and basically the exceedance days can be limited and reduced if we're all taking our part to reduce our contributions, especially on ozone alert days.
Awesome. That was a really informative response. Thank you, Michelle. Next, we have one from Nicholas, who asked, what's the stance of Department of Transportation's turnpike authorities and municipalities on public transit, at least from your perspective?
Well, I can't speak for them, so I don't know if I'd be able to share anything about their stance, but the DOT, provides a lot of support for public transit. That's where most transit agencies are getting funding for the replacement of their old diesel and gas vehicles to new alternative fuel vehicles that have updated emission standards. So I would say they're definitely at the forefront of catalyzing our use of alternative fuels in transit. So they're a huge help. And I think that they definitely see, they take a broad approach, but within the DOT, they have the Federal Transit Administration, and you could visit that website and to learn more about kind of their focus on mass transit specifically.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question here from Susan Bishop. She's asked, what about light rail options? And I might follow that up too with, you know, is there anything in motion to get this type of transportation option in our community? And if so, what are the roadblocks keeping us from having light rails here?
Sure. So firstly, I love light rail, and that would be an awesome project to undertake. Back to the DOT, they do provide funding not just for buses, but for rail projects and other mobility options like that. So it is something that we could access transportation for if there was enough support in the area to undertake that type of project. But I think at least for our community, although light rail is you know, very beneficial when it's done, I think because we already have an existing transit agency that's working so hard and is really making incredible progress in expanding and providing accessibility to our current transit offerings, I would say at least in the near term, just really bolstering the transit options that we have, increasing awareness of those transit options, making it easier for people to access you know, those options. Just really, I think if more people begin adopting the transit that we have, maybe we can really start to move towards some of those more future focused options. Because back to the sort of the car centric nature that we have here in the US, I think it is sort of a cultural shift that needs to happen. So let's build some support and excitement around traveling by bus, and then maybe we can move towards light rail.
Yeah, absolutely. When it actually comes to that, how can we as individuals really encourage that adoption? Does that look like us taking public transit, even if we don't need to, inviting others along, or what do you think?
So yeah, it does involve you taking public transit. You know, that's the main way you can support it, is by using it, and, you know, recruiting your friends to ride with you. You know, if you have multiple cars, or if you could even get rid of your car and use public transit, that's not an option for everyone. So I'm not like suggesting everyone does this, but you know, there are some people that might make sense for. And yeah, definitely using public transit is going to be the best way that you can support it, and just increasing awareness around it. Yeah, and honestly, we have a great system here in Tulsa that I think not as many people take advantage of as I would hope to see. I rode the bus several times this past summer because our ozone, or our air quality program, actually sponsored several months of free fare on Tulsa Transit. And we hope that we'll be able to do that again in the future, because that is really one way that we can be improving. Basically, you know, people, when it's free, people are like, oh, okay, I'll give it a ride, you know, I'll give it a try. And then maybe they see how that fits into their daily commuting habits and how they can switch some trips to a transit trip. So yeah, I would say start with some trips, the ones that make sense, and then go from there as it fits with, as it's convenient for your daily life.
Great pieces of advice there. What about, okay, we've got one here. You mentioned microtransit, so the kind of curb to curb on demand service. Could you tell us a little bit about how that's different from micromobility?
Yes, so micromobility is, you know, a bike or a scooter. So we're seeing, you know, Bird, Lime, This Machine, local nonprofit, shout out. And microtransit is transit. So it's not like a shared mobility. Well, it is shared mobility. It's not a shared small mobility. It's like, you know, you're riding in a vehicle with other people. You have seatbelt on, all of that. So I would just say it's the size of the vehicle, where you would be riding that vehicle. Yeah, it's going to be like a van size to a small cutaway bus size versus, you know, something you need to wear a helmet on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is that something that already exists in other communities and has been adopted successfully?
Yes, it does. So Tulsa Transit did a study of how it could be done here too. So we're kind of ready to move forward with that, it sounds like, as soon as the right funding opportunity comes along. But yeah, you can look into microtransit and see lots of case study examples of successful programs throughout the country.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And then how about, you had mentioned the mobility hub centered on food security. I'd love to open that up a little bit here while we still have some folks around.
Sure. So the mobility hub, I think that the idea is to center that at a grocery store. And at least for the mobility innovation strategy, it was really identified, you know, I think for food desert areas, especially, trying to increase access to getting to this, you know, minimal options for fresh, healthy food that might be in those areas. So a mobility hub where there are lots of different options to get to and from a grocery store would be an ideal location to site or to pilot a mobility hub idea to have it at the grocery store. So it would be basically, you would want to encourage and have kind of a full spectrum of mobility modes at those locations. Obviously, if it's at a grocery store, you also want to be thinking about, you know, well, what can I actually carry my groceries with me back home? You know, you might not want to hop on a scooter if you've got a bunch of groceries, but maybe there are, like, I don't know, maybe you can have special bikes that have a bigger basket where you could put some of your groceries, different, you know, unique kind of tweaks that you can make to potentially make that work. But yeah, basically just finding those spots where people really need to get to and from and have many different options. And so I think grocery stores were really looked at for that part of the mobility innovation strategy.
Awesome. Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle, for answering all those questions. We did already launch our exit survey, so thank you everyone who contributed to that. It's really valuable for us to be able to continue to improve this program and really make it the best that it can be for everyone that attends. So thank you for completing the surveys today. And Corey, I'll turn it back to you for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Morgan. And thank you again, Michelle. Such great information. We could definitely sit and talk with you for another hour or more just to learn about all the options that are out there. It's exciting, and that Tulsa is taking a leadership role in some of these efforts. So thank you for sharing that. And also, I saw that your Eric Pollard over at ACOG has also offered some information in there. So thank you, Eric, for sharing as well. Again, thank you to our sponsors, our lead sponsor, Williams, our neighborhood partners, Public Service Company of Oklahoma and PSO WindChoice, our community advocates, American Waste Control, Covanta, the Met, One Oak, Save Our Streams, Spirit Air Systems, the Tulsa Farmers Market, and Bank of the West, and Camp Trevera for joining us and supporting us today for this incredible program. And we'll make this available online soon, so look out for that. And we look forward to seeing you at our next First Thursday back on Zoom on November 3rd. So please join us for that. And again, Michelle, thank you so much. And I think you're going to stick around just for a little bit if people have a few more questions.
Yes, I will. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the day. We'll see you soon. Okay. Look.